Hello, and welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting. It's Friday, December 23rd, 2016. And we have with us, joining with us is Juan. Let's say hi, Juan. Yeah. Justin. Kevin.
Hey.
And Sheriff. Good to have you around. Okay, let's get started with statuses. Does anyone want to go first, or we'll go through in alphabetical order? Cool. Okay, I'll start. So this past week, I was really happy to publish a blog post on upgrading a DoneJS plugin to CanJS 3. The reception on that has been pretty good, and I did a training on the migration guide on the same day, on Wednesday. And along with that, I made a bunch of improvements to the migration guide. I kind of split up the structure a little bit more into 5 different steps instead of the 3 that we had previously, and then added a lot of info about moving from like can.something or can/component to component, or the individual modules. So those were probably my big accomplishments. Next week, hopefully we will announce Steel 1. So I'll be going through the Steel site and trying to see if anything needs to be cleaned up or fixed. And then hopefully we get to talk about it today, but there are some bigger changes to the canjs.com homepage and some of the other pages that I'd like to get a move on. So that's my status. Juan, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I was I'm rolling off my client project, or I rolled off the client project this week. So I really only had a couple half days to work this week. In that time, I've been switching back to Can Validate and getting myself back in the mindset of that. There's 2 parts that I was working on. The first part is the Can Validate legacy. So that is making sure we have an easy upgrade path for people using the old version of Can Validate in a 3.0 application, or CanJS 3.0 app. And then the next thing is to start working on the proposal for the Can Validate refactor. So it's just going to work a little differently, a lot differently than we're used to now. Yeah, that's it. So that's what I've been working on this week.
Sweet, sounds good. Justin, you want to go?
Yeah, so I mostly worked and helped other people this week. The only thing that I did myself was I fixed a bug with each and define map. I worked on a lot of different topic proposals, and some of those, or some different proposals for new features or enhancements of CanJS, and those are what I want to talk about after we're done with statuses.
Sounds good. Kevin?
Yeah, so this week on Monday, released CanJS 3.3.0, which we talked a lot about last week. It's just the combined release that with Can namespace that I talked about a lot. After that, I started working on DoneJS. So the generators are mostly ready for 1.0. There's still a few small bugs, but primarily everything's updated to Can 3 and Steel. And then I started working on getting everything else working. So I've been working on SSR mainly was the first thing, and hopefully I'll have that working today. And then small side project, I got Steel TypeScript working. So there's like a 0.3 version of Steel TypeScript. If anyone's interested in TypeScript and wants to try it out with Steel, that plugin is released. So that's my status.
Sweet, that's awesome. Sheriff?
So I didn't do much of thing for a long time, but I was following the changes. But this week I was a jury in Algeria Web Awards. What I did in the ceremony of the awards, I talked a lot about CanJS, or almost CanJS 3, to do some evangelism with the Algerian community, and I told them that we can use any component, any module in CanJS 3. For example, if we use React, we can use observables to design a good app state easily, more than Flux with Redux and all this complicated stuff behind. And I think we should make some examples about some architectures for application with other frameworks like Angular and React, so people can be more convinced about this stuff. And I'm interested with CanValidate because I started using CanJS in the agency where I work now. So maybe I can help Juan with CanValidate, because I started to make some forms, and I saw that we don't have CanValidate with we're working with Can3. So it will be good if I can help with this. Okay, that's all for.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome to have you back. I didn't catch where, did you give a talk, or were you at a conference where you were talking about Can3, or where did you say that you were talking about it?
It was Algerian Web Awards. It was a competition between websites and Facebook pages and Twitter accounts and applications, where developers and managers met and talk. Someone won prizes and some else no. It's a competition. I was a jury, a technical jury to evaluate the websites and the applications, and it was opportunity for me to meet some people and some managers that I know, and I talked about CanJS and DoneJS and the future, and what's the real goal about DoneJS and CanJS is to have a stable and a longevity for a solid framework where that you can use everywhere with every JS application. That's what
Sweet.
it was.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so before we move on to the topics that we have in the forum post, does anyone have anything that they didn't post in the forum that they want to bring up or talk about? Cool. All right. Okay, so going through the forum right now. Justin, I think you were the first one who posted any topics. So you want to start with some of yours?
Yeah, I was first. So yeah, first was Ember's task implementation, Ember concurrency. I don't know, I really like that. It's basically cancelable promises for the most part. You really need generator functions. I didn't really look into what it would take to implement it without, what the transpiled version, or if you wanted to have this yourself, would end up looking, or to be able to write these out in ES5, how difficult that would look. But it is a common problem to need actions that are running to be able to destroy them, resume them, that kind of thing. Seem like a nice project that would be good to adopt or steal. I don't know if anybody else looked at it, clicked on the link, or had thoughts about it. But worth checking out. There's a video.
Yeah, I started to look into it a little bit, and it seemed like a cool way of getting some more advanced asynchronous functionality without having to have the tedium of handling everything yourself.
Yes. Yeah. So define keys was another thing. This is just a proposal. Here, I guess I can show my screen here. This is just a proposal so that you could have a keys, and it would give you the observable keys, basically. Not the observable, well, the observable enumerable ones, basically. I think this is fine, this implementation. Part of me is really thinking we need to go down the rabbit hole of kind of like can-util providing some basic operators. We almost need like a can-util operators or can operators, or maybe not operators is the right word, but things that say, okay, given any object, give me the keys for it. Give it like an in operator, a object.keys, a kind of a has-own property sort of thing, so that we could build up our own, we have an each in CanJS, and the old can 2.3 each would work kind of no matter what you passed it. That's not, I don't think, totally true with the each as it is right now. The can each or the can-util each. I like that ability to say, hey, here's here's a utility that will loop through whatever the heck you pass it. Here's another utility that will here's another utility that sorry, someone just came into my room. Another utility that will let you know if a property is into the property, let you know the keys of the property, that kind of stuff.
So that seems like it should cut both ways, right? Like, I think it's useful to have can-util handle whatever you pass it, but also to have APIs in each of those modules that provide that functionality, essentially.
Maybe.
Well, otherwise you have to depend on can-util or whatever it is, if it's a separate module, to be able to get functionality that I would think should come with the module, if that makes sense.
Yes and no. I mean, I would do this the way that JavaScript is starting to do this, where we kind of have something like a symbol, and these could certainly use, I mean, it's not hard to do like a, if we want to define list has a for each method, it's not hard to just do, for the can-util for each on this with all the arguments. You know what I mean? But you get what I'm saying, right?
Sure, yeah.
Right? So that's not, like, it can still provide its own, but if you want generic looping, what you're doing is on define map, you're providing, well, you're like exposing whatever the iterator symbol, and you're doing whatever you need to do here. I forgot what this exactly looks like. But you're doing this, and then you're basically saying, now for each is going to look for that iterator symbol and then be able to that's all it needs. So anything that wants to define its own looping, it does it this way. If it wants its own, like, how keys are looked up on this, maybe there's a keys version of this, and we have these CanJS utility methods that that look for this stuff. So that way, we can make a map that would work as long as you're doing iterator, and anything else that you're really looking for would be possible. And then, yeah, like I said, you could still add it yourself using these things. But I think to me, that's like a secondary. It's almost like inconsequential that both ways, because it's like, well, once you have this set up, then the other thing is very easy to provide on top of it or around it. I don't know if that makes sense. But hopefully.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess
I wouldn't want our like, oh, the way that you can have like a for each function with a define map is to bring in canutil and use it instead of just having that API within define map.
Yeah. That's fine. I mean, the reason, well, like if you think about keys in the DOM, keys work that way, and iteration is starting to work that way. That's why, like, you know, the idea, the browser is starting, or the JavaScript starting to go this way. That's why you can do like for, you know, var thing of list or something like that. Like this list provides the iterator, and then this way you don't have to, list doesn't have to implement like all the different, you know, yeah, list you could still provide it a for each and a map and whatever you want, but JavaScript is supposed to be like, once you have an iterator, then the language can supply a bunch of things like this. And it's similar to what we're doing. I agree with you that some things obviously will want a for each on define list. That goes without saying. But there's a nice, especially, part of this, yeah, I agree this is nice for users, but part of the reason why I think we really need this ability is because of we're starting to introduce a lot of types. Like, let's say I had a defined set type or something, or there was like a defined, like maybe actual like map. there's like a real map type that we could support. Whatever person passes us, we might want like maybe, you know, for like pound each. Whatever map is, whatever this thing is, we need to be able to loop through it, and we can't assume it's going to have a for each on it. So what we want to be able to do is have some kind of global looper thing that can loop through everything, and the individual properties can define their way to kind of opt into that looping. And it's extra nice, of course, if JavaScript can just understand it.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to bring up, like, yeah, it's going to be super useful to add that to like a canutil, but also providing those APIs in the individual modules is.
Yeah, personally, I don't know if we would need to define keys. I agree with you about like for like each, but the define with keys, I'm not as sure, because if you think about it, it's like, you know, I think people are used to the practice of object.keys. You know, they don't write thing.keys. Right? It's not like you do this.
Then wouldn't you want define map.keys, like a static property on define map?
No, I don't know. I really don't know, because even with, I mean, you still, like, if I do, I create my own constructor function, I'm still doing object.keys.
Yeah.
Right? And the idea is that, like, well, there's proposals so that just there's going to be a symbol that thing could have on its prototype or whatever, so that object.keys would look for that. I think a lot of the reason why also JavaScript is going this way is because they want to keep, if they did it this way, then no object could have a keys property. Right? Because then there's this function here. So they put these things on like this, at least in the case of object.keys, so you can, you know, it doesn't conflict with any object you want here, which is especially important for define map and things that might have, we might want to have a keys property. So I wouldn't want to have a keys on the prototype, maybe keys on define map, but then it's still they're all define maps and define lists work the same way under the hood for their observable keys. So there only needs to be one. Do we need to have one on? Do we need to teach people, like, well, should you be using define map if it's a map, or dot keys, or define list if it's a list, or if it's just a normal define, then you use just normal define dot keys, right? Like, that's why partly I'm leaning towards just saying, like, well, there's just a keys method for JavaScript or for CanJS that anything can opt into, and you're always going to pass whatever your thing is. And that's the only keys method you need to know, because this can just get crazy.
I don't like the idea of saying there's one function in a different module that you have to know to have good guys for all of these other modules. It seems. But isn't
that how JavaScript works right now? I mean, you don't do date.keys, you just do object.keys.
Yeah, but object is just available to you wherever. What I'm thinking is I don't want to have to bring in another module to get something as simple as iteration on a map.
Yeah, but I also kind of agree with Justin's point that we don't want to have a keys property on every object. Like, it's really going to break my piano app that I'm writing if we start calling everything keys.
I totally agree. The API should probably be something like, you bring in define map, and then it has those functions similar to how object.keys works. I totally agree.
I don't know. I don't think we should have a define map keys, define list keys, define keys. I do think we should have for each, because that's like super common, and like those functional utilities I'm all right with. But I don't know. It's nice to, the whole idea behind CanJS is you have these modules that kind of like do one thing. Yeah, you might have to bring in a module for it, but I don't know. We could make it a whole like symbol, or they could all be combined. I mean, you could do require can util operators, and that is like, and then it would just be like that each one could be this could be a module that loads other modules, and then it's just operators.keys. If we want to make it small, then we just do that. And then this has like it has like all of your standard-ish inspection, object inspection. It'd be nice even if like this had ops dot like especially on define map, you would be able to get like your definition of your object back. Does it own property descriptor? Right, things like that. We could do it this way then, as a kind of a compromise, where sure we add the ones that are like going to be super common, but the ones that already JavaScript kind of has its own way of doing, we could just put them all in one ops. And if you want that, then you just have to get the ops, and then you have ops dot, and then you have ops dot whatever you want for each map, all of the basic iterator kind of functionality.
And in theory, those things would start to get deprecated as the symbols are supported.
Ideally, we would make it so that we're using, yes, the symbols are, I think you can point a symbol at another, like, I think you can, I haven't played enough with symbols to know. Symbols, you can have references to symbols, I assume. So you could make it so that, like, sure, in the beginning, maybe we have symbol dot, what was the one that doesn't exist? I like kind of wrote this in the, maybe it's in here. No. This is this one. What's the symbol? The symbol is own property keys, right? So we could have like an own property keys symbol, or we could have something like, maybe ours is like can symbol that own property keys. And my hope is that eventually, I haven't looked into this enough, but my hope is that eventually, like, we could say, well, we're just generating some random symbol here, and in ES5, if this is just like some random string, basically. But in browsers that eventually support it, we will hopefully be able to map that to the legitimate supported symbol, and then maybe object.keys just works for people. And then you could just use object.keys, and even on our define maps and things like that, it'll give you the right answer. That would be my hope, is that we are kind of maintaining our own versions of these things, but we're trying over time to line them up with like JavaScript's version of those. So anyways, to summarize, at this point, I'm, I was talking about what I wanted to look into. I wanted to look into like a coverall solution for all of this that would, yeah, it's nice if we solved it, this define keys right now, sure, that's nice. But to me, the real solution is something more like this, that we're setting ourselves up for the future, basically. And it's also something very nice to use for, something extremely nice to use for when you're building CanJS stuff. We can make it so that your, we don't care what your thing is. We don't care what your, how do you say this? We don't care what kind of objects we create in the future, as long as they like implement maybe a peek key or a read key. We're gonna know how to like use that to do the right thing. So like future, can stash or something, when it wants to make sure it's like gonna read observables correctly, or can observation reader, if people are familiar with it, it's doing, it's getting ops dot, read. There's an ops.read, and that is just taking anything and taking some property name, and internally ops.read is reading the like read symbol maybe on anything to get a function, that the correct function to read prop. Maybe there's an ops.peek, an ops.write, and every type has all the symbols for all of this stuff. So we can read, write, figure out keys, check if a property is in there, all of this stuff without, I don't know. The APIs can be very flexible over time and change over time, but this can stay the same, essentially. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, last thing. Ilya's working on this. This is, we're not sure exactly what the final expression is, but we're gonna make this work first and then figure out how to package it up in an API for people to use. It might be like this can connect map merge behavior that you can mix into your behaviors. Basically what it's going to do is, if you have nested data, so let's say I have a contribution month, and it has open source projects, and there's an author. You can see this is like a different data type inside here that have IDs. And then an update happens, and this new data comes back, and like, ID 1, changed to CanJS. and then this SteelJS was inserted here, and this was left alone, and then this was changed from ID 5 to ID 6. Well, if you do this right now with just like the naive kind of brute force replace, yeah, it's going to change February to, whoops. It's going to change Feb to February. But what's going to happen here is it's going to change CanJS to CanJS. But what's actually going to do not what I think it tries to do right now is it tries to change this object here with ID 2, this instance, to actually have ID 3 and then change its name. It won't just like simply insert, SteelJS here, because it won't know that like these IDs match and that kind of thing. And then here, what it would do is it would also try to change, the ID from 5 to 6, which we don't want to happen. What we want it to do is replace it with a whole new instance here. So we want, as a change here, we kind of what we're really looking to do is kind of our own, on the data layer, our own diff and patch kind of that understands IDs basically. So the changes we'd only wanted to make are change it to February, change the first thing to CanJS, insert SteelJS, and then replace author with a new instance. So to set it all up, we're gonna, I think, enforce that on any nested data type like OS projects, you're probably gonna have to set the algebra on a nested OS. So OS projects here is of OS project list type, where you have to set the algebra so we know like what the unique identifier is. If you don't set it, then we're just gonna assume all of these have a unique ID property, or their ID property is what uniquely defines them. And then I kind of wrote out the mechanism that would do this, but that's not really important right now. I guess in the end, we're just thinking we're gonna make a helper that does this called like smart merge that can take like anything and the new data and is just gonna be able to like recursively merge the data into either the nested lists and data structures that are there, and like kind of scaffold out or just pseudocode how that might look. And so people could just use that smart merge themselves for whatever purpose they want, but then we might just have also it packaged up as a behavior so that automatically things like updated instance are already changed to use smart merge instead of the merging that they use now, and make sure that like they fire the right events afterwards and things like that. So
that would be pretty slick.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has thoughts about that, but that's what we're working towards. Cool. All right, that's all the topics I had then.
Sweet. Okay. So I think I had posted next, but I think it would be good to talk about the can validate stuff first. So Juan, do you want to bring up what you had to talk about?
Yeah, so now that I'm on open source for whatever, one of the things that I've been wanting to work on for forever was can validate. It kind of went by the wayside just because I haven't had time to work on it. So in talking with Justin, we figured out that the best thing to do is to kind of refresh it a little bit. So one thing we did just to help anybody that's still using it now, if they want to jump into 3.0, we have can validate legacy. And that's in a pre-release now. I'm going to publish the docs for it soon. And that's probably just going to stay as the old version of can validate, but able to work with 3.0. Now, the next step is to start working on can validate itself and just bringing it up to match the same patterns that we're using in CanJS 3.0. So if you look at the can validate repository, the can map plugin is shipped with it, and so are the shims, so that you can use validate.js. I'm going to separate all those out, just like we do with CanJS 3.0. So those things, all those separate parts will actually be separate repositories and separate modules. And then we're going to update the API a lot as well. There's a proposal issue that Justin created. We talked about it a lot. There's two options there. The more I look at it, the more I feel like option 2 is better.
Do you want to share your screen or something so people know what you're talking about?
I'm actually scrolling around like I was sharing my screen. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so so this is the proposal. And one of the things that I learned about this is my mind works from the top in. So like I'm trying to define the actual APIs that a developer is going to use. And working with Justin, we figured out that, well, I figured out that we should start from the inside and work our way out. So he started by defining these type defs for errors and the actual validators. So if you want to create your own validators, that side note, I'm going to create a bunch of them. So like required, things like that. And not sure exactly how we're going to ship those yet. Probably as a separate module, but we'll see. Okay, so then from that layer outward, we have the way that you'll see, the way that you'll use can validate itself. So this first option is trying to decouple validate.js from how you actually write your definitions, right? So we have validate, and you have this validate to validator. So this will convert these options into something validate.js can understand. So the problem with this is that you actually have to write this piece of code. It's kind of crummy, but it decouples it pretty nicely. So I'm going to skip ahead to option 2. Option 2, you can see it matches more kind of what we have now. So there's no extra stuff to call. It is a little cleaner looking. I think it's just easier to write. There's just more stuff that we'll have to do under the hood. So I kind of want to get everybody's thoughts. I know that there's a few projects that a few clients that we have that are using it. I'm not aware of anybody outside of those clients if they're using it. I'm glad Sharif is able to use it or is trying to use it, wanting to use it. So any input would be amazing.
Yeah, the second option definitely looks like an easier API to understand. Are we losing any flexibility by we being like users that are using the module? Is there any flexibility lost by having that more simple API?
I don't think so. Like right now, in order for you to use can validate, you have to require the core can validate stuff, map, if you want to use it in a map, and then the shim, and then validate.js. So you have to do 4 things if you want to use it in a map. That really hasn't changed. It's just the only difference now is they might be separate repositories. So that might be a little bit weird, but you don't lose any flexibility there. So I don't think so.
Well, you do, but not important flexibility. So the flexibility you lose is you couldn't have different validation libraries on the same map. You couldn't like validate one property on a map with one validation library and another
but you can't
validation.
do that.
No, you can't do that now. But
yeah, and that doesn't.
I don't think it's important.
Like a worthwhile goal.
No, I don't think it's worthwhile. I would actually say now. I don't think. I think the API shouldn't even look like validate.map as much as it should just look like validate, and then you pass it the locator, because that would make it work with what's it called, decorators. And I think we should be making all of like can event stream or can define stream and can define validate, which is probably, I mean, or can validate work with decorator.
Oh yeah, we did talk about that. Okay.
So if it were me, I would just change this proposal to, instead of validate.map, just validate, and you pass it the locator. And then I'm very pleased with it.
I think actually, did we do that?
Oh, as a decorator, I had it down there. Yeah, but I was actually told that you don't, if decorators aren't called with parentheses, they're just passed a function anyways. So that I was,
Oh
you
yeah.
don't even need that second parentheses down there. So we can just remove that that part. So we don't need, validate parentheses, then another parentheses. It can just be validate locator. And I think that is what, I think that's how it should work and be built. Now that's going to take, I was looking into this too. It's going to be a little tricky to make that happen. But I think it's doable.
To make using the decorators happen?
Well, I'm it's complex, but basically it's how define works. Is it's kind of compiling all of these properties. What presumably could happen is you would need to recompile with these validates. So basically what we need to, we need to do it for can stream anyways, or can define stream, and we would need to do it for this, is we need to expose more of the define map internals so that after, because basically we're going to be creating the locator type. And then what we need to do is say, oh, you might have already defined the behavior for the zip code property as having a getter and a setter and all of these other things, who knows? But we're going to go in there and basically somehow say, because sometimes there's an order that these things all need to be applied at. Somehow we're going to go inside there and be like, well, we're going to destroy whatever has been done before, and we're going to go and loop through and see anything that has required, or any of these other properties in the definition. We're going to then undo what we did before and somehow redo it, but be able to have this kind of new order of first we're going to create the types, then we're going to create the getter, but now we're going to wrap that with the validation, and now we're going to add serialization or whatever. So there's an order of how these things get composed that somehow we're going to have to allow plugins to intersect, put in their own stuff. So
yeah, we need hooks for being able to provide that functionality from other modules.
Yeah, especially as they're going to be maybe there's a stream plus a validation plus this plus that. It's a problem. It's a technical challenge that we're going to have to figure out.
Somebody was working on that, right? It was can define stream.
Can define stream does this, but it doesn't do it right. Okay. It does it wrong. It just injects it's the same thing. Can define, you can only have one can define stream for an entire application, and that's not how we want things anymore. So it was a kind of a stopgap to get the functionality there, but can define stream is going to need a 2.0 release, or it might not have ever been even 1.0, but its first official release is going to have to work this way.
Okay, sorry, I'm taking notes. Okay, so should I work on can validate, or should I help with can define stream to get that working first?
Well, you could.
Or can define.
I mean that. I would finish up the legacy one.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about it once it comes to what the best approach is. It might be the easiest approach is just to get what's needed to make this flip in can define stream. So it's okay, well, we've at least gotten can define or define map able to do what we need. Then we can go and add, but it might be worth doing them both about the same time, simply, or at least figuring out their hooks at the same time, because it might shade how we build those hooks to have kind of 2 points of, okay, streams and validations need to intersect at different times, gives us a little bit more clarity on how the system is going to have to work overall and probably result in a better system. So it might be worth doing like the very minimal basics of validation, and then try to do both validation and the rewrite of streams at about the same time to make sure define map is going to be able to handle both use cases.
Right. Okay.
I could see that as the approach, the best approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Cool. Any other comments? Cool.
Yeah, looks good. It'll be good to have like a really good API around can validate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm excited too. So.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. The last topic that we had was stuff that I brought up.
So I proposed talking about Node version support, Jason. I don't know if we want to table that for. Another time.
Sorry. No, let's talk about that. I totally missed your comment in the.
No problem.
In the thread. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's something we're going to decide right now, but there's an open issue for figuring out what Node versions we're going to support for DoneJS 1.0. Matthew put a comment in here that said we should poll the community and our clients and see what versions they're using and try to support it that way, or to choose that way. Another option is basically we could kind of decree that these are the versions we're going to test with, and maybe that would get some of these people to update their versions of Node. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone has ideas. I don't think we're going to decide it now. And either way, we should request people to tell us what versions we're using, or they're using. So I think Matthew's comment is good. Whether or not we use that information to decide or not, we'll see. But
yeah, I would say that we should start off with basing our decision on the what Node versions are still supported. I don't know what the LTS version and
so right now, version 0.10 maintenance ends in like a week, and then after that it'll be version 4, version 6, and then the latest version 7 will still be supported by Node.
Wait, can you say that again? What was the last thing you said?
So after next week, the versions that will be supported by Node will be version 4, version 6, and the latest one, version 7.
My instinct is unless someone comes to us and screams, you've got to keep something before 6, I think we should just target 6 and after. Because if you think about it, we're kind of finishing a framework that hasn't even been released yet. We're going to release it. Someone's got to start development, presumably start development on it. And then, now, yes, maybe they started development on DoneJS 09 or whatever. Sure, and scream bloody murder that there's no way you can upgrade to 6. But unless someone's screaming bloody murder at us that they have to have it, I say we do 6. We should ask and make sure it's as public as possible that, let us know. But so far, I know just in terms of Toby's clients, there's 1 or 2 that they're using older versions of Node, but I don't think they're going to be using DoneJS 1.0 anyways. So who cares? It's not worth it's not worth going through all the pain and suffering for such a small segment of the population, I think.
How much well, I think it's tough to say that just because we haven't officially hit 1.0 doesn't mean that people aren't using them for production. So I think it's a little tough to say that we get to choose whatever versions we want to support because we're hitting 1.0 in number. But I guess the question is, or at least on my side, is how much effort. So as of, and I posted a link in the chat. So maintenance.
Yeah, I can share this if people want to see it.
Maintenance ends for 0.10 and 0.12 at the end of next week. So it's version 4 that is the lowest version that's maintained. So I would say it's, unless there's complications with supporting version 4, I think it would be a good general policy to support whatever active versions Node supports, essentially, and just have that be our general policy going forward.
Maybe, but it's only active till April, right?
Then maintenance starts and it's active for another year. Maintenance for another year.
But they're not like actively. What does active mean? New features or accepting new features?
Yeah. So maybe the correct distinction is any maintained versions of Node. I think we should just match that same support for DoneJS and just have that be our general policy.
I guess, I mean, I'm fine with doing it if it's not hard. I really think it's more. Well, I would line it up with. To me, it's a cost benefit, right? Is how we should look at it. And if it's really expensive to maintain 4, and we're not going to get much benefit out of it, then there's no need to do 4.
The difference is ES6
and backport.
The difference is ES6. So version 6 supports like 99.99% of ES6, and version 4 doesn't.
Yeah, which doesn't really matter to us because everything we write is in ES5.
But it wouldn't need to be.
It would be because, well, CanJS, I mean, we'd have to start transpiling everything, right?
No, I mean, all the server-side pieces would not need to be.
Sure. But how, I mean, at least for me, we're talking about syntactic sugar. If there's like, hey, we really need sets or we really need weak maps or something like that, then let's talk about it. But if it's just for syntactic sugar and arrow, then to me it's not worth it.
If you take that stance, then the cost of supporting version 4 is just, right now, it's just running the tests on version 4. I mean,
right now, yeah. So that's why I don't think it's a big problem. But if it, to me, it's like a tag along version. Like, we can support it as long as it is well behaved.
Yeah. So like I said, we're probably not going to decide this today. So what I'll do is I will add a comment to the issue saying that people should vote, and then I'll add individual comments for each of the versions so people can thumbs up saying they're using that version or not. And I'll post that on the
and like they should say that, like, I almost want like a difference where it's like, I have a production DoneJS app on Node 12. Okay, that's a whole different thing than like, my company won't let me upgrade to Node, it only supports Node 12 right now. Well, okay, you know, I care much less for that group of people, because it's like, well, if the whole world is only on Node 6 and 4, then that's just, we're adding to that pressure. You've got to get your company's policy straightened out so they can move to it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we still support IE9 and CanJS, but that's very, to me, it's different. You don't have, companies have control over which versions of Node they use. They don't have control over what browsers their users are using.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep the vote as simple as possible, just a thumbs up if you're using it. And then if we want to dive in, we'll have the people's, username. We can reach out to them to figure out more details if we're actually super curious. Because my concern is if we add a bunch of stipulations, no one's going to fill it out anyway. So. Yeah.
How did you say you're going to take the poll? Did you say a GitHub issue with different comments?
So we have a GitHub issue. I'll add a comment explaining, and then I'll add individual comments for the different versions, and people can thumbs up the versions that they're using.
Do our forums have any poll functionality?
Maybe.
I'm just wondering if that would be easier.
Yeah, if there is a better way, let me know. I
You know,
just,
Google
yeah, I can.
poll or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we could do it a different way.
Let's see.
Okay, just an idea.
Cool. That's it.
Sweet. Okay, we're at almost an hour. The only things that I wanted to bring up were related to issues I created after the usability sessions a couple weeks ago of some bigger ideas of how to improve the CanJS website so it's easier for new and existing users to get around. I don't know if we want to talk about it and go over an hour or just table it.
How about can we talk like, can we take one of those things and talk about it for like 5-10 minutes and then?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. Let me share my screen. Oh, did I close it? Here we go. All right, so excuse me. So I guess if I'm gonna pick one, it's probably gonna be this one. So right now, let me just go to the site. So right now, go to the CanJS homepage, see this little introduction, and then there's all of this info about all of the different collections and versions and how the CanJS package is split up and the different version numbers for all of the packages, which I don't think this is a great onboarding experience for people who are just learning about what CanJS is. So sorry, let me find the issue. This ties in with an issue that was already open. Okay, sorry, it's this one. So this ties in with a mockup that Tom made where on the site there's the colored images and then links to the different guides and bigger links to specific pages that we would want the user to go to. So I guess kind of one topic to bring up is changing the website or changing the homepage so that we follow through on this design, and also moving the collections, moving these sections, the collections and the can package. I'd hope to move those to like a separate main API page that has all of these listed out, and that's easier for someone to understand, like, oh, I'm looking for a can component, and that they don't have to know whether it's under core or infrastructure or ecosystem. They can search that main API page, which we have right now. It's just not clear that you would go to the home page to access that info. It seems like most people go to the API guide to find it. So yeah, that's what I want to bring up for discussion, is following through with something like this prototype and then moving those collections and the can package sections to another page.
So
thoughts,
I'm hesitant to move that stuff off the homepage because the homepage is not designed for new users. That's not like the primary user persona that it's concerned about. So
and I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, so that's where I think probably the central debate should be. CanJS purposefully picked we're going to design the site for existing users to be able to find quickly what they want. And I hate when I go to the old CanJS site or most JavaScript frameworks and I can't immediately. Oh, and also I think those things, it also guides to like, or having those things also shows that it's like, oh, this isn't really a framework. You're not hit over the head with the sales kind of introduction thing. It's like, here's a list of all the libraries that you can use. So there's that benefit to it too, is that it fits in with the branding message. So I'm hesitant to change our target and the branding message. I think there's like probably ways that those sections can be improved visually, and it feels kind of weighty. But I am hesitant to change that. What is the most important target user persona?
So where do we want new users to go?
What do you mean?
Like
New users?
If the homepage isn't
Users,
targeted at new users, what should
New
they go
users,
to?
we want to get them into the guides page, and then into one of the guides. That should be the flow for new users. Not exploring the homepage.
Yeah, so I think there's already that prototype of adding these guides links to help get new users to those pages, which I think is good.
I think that's fine.
I'm gonna guess that no one's gonna disagree with doing something like this.
I don't particularly like Tom's design there, but I think that like the idea there is fine. And it feels a little, I don't know. If you share that again, I don't know. It just feels a little. It's just, I don't know. It feels like it doesn't fit in. You know what I mean? It feels like someone just like took these sections and just put them there without linking the whole. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Has he iterated on that prototype?
No,
now?
he hasn't. I just think that's what it just needs.
So I feel like the homepage, the landing page should be for everybody, and then that's where you filter people to different places of the site. So new users, here are the guides. Existing users, here are the docs. Here's the API stuff. I'm kind of curious why that's, I feel like how most sites are. I'm kind of curious why.
Well, it does shift them. It does say, if you're new to the project, the best place to start is the guides page. It says that maybe not big and bold enough, but it does say that, like, that's the second sentence on the website.
Yeah, so like following through on this design is just making this more understandable, right? And when I feel like, if I remember correctly, I think 2 of the 3 usability testers ended up still like scrolling through this collection and like somewhat trying to understand all of these modules, and then typically being overwhelmed because there was just so much information that they didn't really understand or they were unsure about.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a problem with the design of that, because it's not it's like a wall of information, those things, and that's no good for anybody, even an existing user. All the npm installs and things like that. I definitely think that there's there's for sure an improvement of this. To me, the ideal would be like what if I had my pick for like, or if I could do something really cool. What I would love is that this homepage looks like a mini application. It's just, maybe this would be great for a user, but I don't know. What I would love, or I think, is everybody's always asking for cheat sheets. Everybody loves cheat sheets. At least this is more, maybe again for more like this is for people who are actively using it, but they all want a cheat sheet. I would love just like source code and maybe a small example, and then there's for every like piece of code, like it's kind of somehow segmented, and you can see like, oh, what's that? Tooltip, that's can component, takes you to can component. And you get somehow like a structured picture of the app, like a little mini app working, but it takes you to all of the parts that are like relevant. Like, oh, this is where the routing is set up. You click here, takes you to can route. Like, and I don't know. I think if I were to do something for the homepage that I think would be really, really useful for especially people who are using a lot, but even maybe helpful for like beginners, because it would be like, oh, here's where there's a little comment, here's where routing is set up. They show the routing, and then they can get to like more information about that. I think that would be cool.
Yeah,
but I there's something, I agree that this is definitely wrong. I guess let's talk about what would be useful for. I don't think I put it this way. Chase, I think you've got a good argument to be made because it's not useful for experienced developers really either. So it's easy to say like anything that would be useful for beginner users is still going to be more useful than this. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I still don't want to lose that though. The like making something that's useful for. I still want the. My preference would be for the guides landing page, because a new user comes to the homepage like once, and sure, they're very important, but they come to it once. So let's put them in this, like, maybe they've got to click one link once, but then they're in this whole world for new users, getting them up experience. People who are every single day coding CanJS, I don't want to give them another link. I don't. I want them to like be taken so that they can immediately start using the framework as fast as possible. What could we do to make the homepage as useful as possible for those people? And I do feel like a cheat sheet would really help, actually.
Yeah, so I created this issue, which I think ties in somewhat well with your cheat sheet idea. It's not the same, but the same idea of kind of showing the main parts of a CanJS app and then being able to like go to those APIs. It's not the same idea, but I think it ties in well. And I think that would be really helpful because I've had existing CanJS users talk to me about how if they are trying to figure out like binding syntax, then you kind of have to know to go to core and then can stash bindings to be able to find out info about the different binding APIs. So like having a cheat sheet where you can like hover over a stash file and see links to like different APIs, I think that would be super helpful. If I'm understanding your idea.
Yeah,
correct.
I think that would be super useful for people.
Yeah, and then I think how do I say this? I think right now existing users don't seem to be going to the homepage to find out where all of the APIs are. They're trying to go to like in the guides, like the API guide, which isn't
existing users. They're going to API guides.
No, sorry. Existing users are, well, existing users don't, as far as I know, existing users aren't as used to going to the homepage to see the list of all of the APIs. It's new users who are going to the API guide to find a list of all of the APIs. But even once you're in the site, it's not super clear that you can go back to the homepage to get a list of all of the APIs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if this would be fixed by just being like core APIs, infrastructure APIs, ecosystem APIs, legacy APIs.
Yeah, I think it's still important to have one central place where all of the APIs are listed, but that one central place is the homepage, which I don't think is super clear. But
yeah, I don't know how you would see without it being. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's that's an interesting point.
I think that I have a feeling that we're going to need to change this navigation to not be core infrastructure and ecosystem and legacy, because it takes time to learn what's under each of these when you're looking for something.
I don't know what you would do besides being able to group those, because it would be overwhelming to show every module listed flat, I think.
Like if you went to an API page and you saw all of the modules.
Yeah. And
well, I agree. It would be too much. It would be too much over here, but I think it would make sense, similar to the current homepage. It would make sense to have one page that you're going to that has all of the APIs listed. That's easier to search. And in that way, I think these sections are super helpful to be able to have one place to search for the APIs. It just seems like it's not clear that you should go to the homepage for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder also if this was, what if this were like, instead of being dense and kind of useless, because it really, like, the one quick title isn't enough. You know what I mean? If instead this homepage was a little bit closer to like the old CanJS homepage and actually was rather long and had like a little bit of useful information for every single module. And that way you can just
is
literally...
old is that pre version 2?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Did you ever see that?
I feel like I have. I don't know
if it's kind of like the jQuery++ website. If you go to jQuery PP, .com, it's basically this. It was this, and on the left it was like, can define and, or sorry, well, not can define, can observe and can observe list and can model, and then when you would click on a section, I don't know if these have the subsections, but it would like open up and then you could see the subsection. But it was all one big page with like this is all one big page with high level information about basically every single module within jQuery++.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be super helpful.
Then it would make the homepage much more of like an API that it's like a high-level API that you would kind of be able to scroll through to find your information, and it would be better, I think, because there would actually be information. Because right now it's just the title and like a 2-word sometime can component custom elements. What does that mean, right?
This one, yeah.
So maybe a shortened, maybe a middle ground to this is the homepage more tells a story that allows us to give a little bit more room to like say, hey, new folks, this is where you should go. Make sure you're doing here, and then it's like APIs section, and it's just like this big, big cheat sheet basically.
Mm-hmm.
So Frank just asked on Gitter, and I was going to ask, isn't there an issue open to make search available for?
There is.
Yeah, there is.
That's we're still going to do that.
Yeah, Mick got it 90% of the way there. He just didn't get a chance to test it in all browsers, I think.
Because I think that's probably going to change a lot of how people find.
I think that's experienced users.
Yeah, existing users.
Yeah, existing users. Well, it's not going to be like Google search, at least not what Mick built. It's title. It just searches the title and the description.
Yeah, but it fixes that problem if you want bindings and you don't know which collection the CanStash bindings API is in.
Yes, that would help. But you'd have to know to you could write bindings, and that actually probably would show up all of the binding syntaxes. So yeah, search will help for sure for existing users. I think what we can do though is that hybrid approach, which will be useful for both beginners and experienced people.
That hybrid approach being
expand this content so it's like instead of one line for can compute, it's like here's can compute and then a little bit of information about can compute and then can define. And yes, the homepage is going to be this massive thing, but then also it feels like then the top section can be more towards like getting new users over to the guides area.
I still disagree with having this information on the homepage, but I agree with providing more information for these different modules.
Yeah, I don't really see. Unfortunately, I guess you kind of need to paint a picture for the the concrete alternative, because having an APIs page, I'm not sure what that means. Like, where does that go? Is that in the sidebar? Then are we getting rid of being able to just click on core and see the core modules that you're going to pretty much use 90% of the time? Like, I'm kind of wary of that, because at least when I'm building stuff, like I basically just click on core and I stick around there until once in a while I need to go into infrastructure or ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that we do. I think it might be good to have an APIs page between guides and core that is all of this information and has links to.
Then what's the homepage for then?
You go to the homepage. If you're a new user, then you want to be directed. We want to put them through that flow of either learning more about CanJS or starting to get into one of the guides.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know for me, I go to the homepage just so that I can get links to start drilling through the navigation. I don't know if, because the homepage is the only place that you can see all of the APIs, if that's why existing users are going to this page. Or
why do you need an APIs? I guess to me, like, why?
If you're in one of these pages, if you're going through the guides and what have you, or if you're actually going through one of these guides, it's not clear where you can see a list of all of the APIs.
Okay.
And that's one issue. And then related to that is if you're in any of these sections, it's not clear to go back to the homepage to get the list of APIs. And that's why I think it really needs to be, it needs to be a page that's in the left-hand navigation.
Yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying. I don't know, I have to think about it.
Does anyone else have any comments on this?
Okay. I was just thinking that Tom should probably hear this feedback.
Yeah, I'll talk to if Tom's around next week. I'll talk to him about it, and we'll have more discussion about these changes before anything's actually implemented. But I do want to start making improvements based on the usability feedback, just so that we can make changes and then do another round of usability testing either at the end of January or beginning of February.
Yeah, what would so let's say we added the API. I mean, I still think you need those groupings.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so the APIs page would just be essentially more
a list of all of the APIs.
Well, it can't be
one place to go.
You can't have a list of all APIs. You can have a list of all modules. All APIs would be a page that's 500 miles long.
You just mean the list that's on the homepage.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why one of the issues that I have open is moving the collections and the can package info all off of the homepage. And I think it would probably best be served on an APIs page that has that same info. And And I don't think you need to list all of the individual, I was misspeaking. I don't think you need to list all of the individual APIs for all of the modules, especially if we have search. That's not an issue. There's no need to have
so it's mostly the
complete list.
UI. Mostly the UI problem is like new users are going to the guides, they like click, they're in to do MVC or something, and then they just can't get. They're like, how do I find more information about can component or whatever they're working on? And they just are like, they're lost because they don't know to click to core.
Right. That's definitely one issue. Another is sometimes they were just looking for where they could find all of the APIs, and it's like they just wanted that overview of components or views or stuff like that. So it wasn't clear to go back to the homepage, especially when that white part of the navigation is hidden once you've scrolled. It's
Yeah, I mean, that's fine if you want to add. I think it's all right if we add an API section. It's not going to like add too many sections to the left. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and we can talk about this more too, but that's probably the biggest thing that one of the bigger things that I wanted to bring up for discussion.
Okay. Cool.
We ran super long, so all right. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you to everyone who's watching. And with that, see you guys later.
Have a